Welcome back, seekers of forgotten lore, to eternal Olympus. Last time, the outcast myth Hephaestus made his dramatic return, trapping the Queen of Heaven, Hera, in a golden throne of his own design. He claimed the ultimate prize, the hand of Aphrodite, and was welcomed at last to Olympus. Now, the stage is set for the greatest celebration in cosmic history, the double wedding of Zeus and Hera, and the unlikely pairing of Hephaestus and Aphrodite. But this is Olympus, and no party is complete without a divine contest, a terrible curse, and the seeds of a new, world-altering betrayal. The return of Hephaestus, while beginning with the sheer, unadulterated drama of an entrapped Queen of Heaven, had ultimately provided a solution of breathtaking elegance to the new order Zeus was attempting to forge. The political calculus of Olympus was complex. Hephaestus, the smith god, the lame outcast, had returned, his unparalleled talent now a recognized and indispensable asset. But more importantly, from Zeus's perspective, the Aphrodite problem had been solved. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, an ancient, powerful, and dangerously chaotic entity, born not from a divine union, but from primordial violence, was finally, safely, married off. She was bound not to a powerful rival like Ares or Poseidon, who might challenge Zeus's authority, but to a humble, ugly, unassuming husband who seemed perfectly content to labor in his forge and would likely cause very little trouble. Hera, once freed, moved with astonishing speed to restore her dignity. The screams of moments before were forgotten, replaced by a regal, icy composure. She adjusted her magnificent robes, straightened her diadem, and surveyed the hall as if the entire incident had been a minor, amusing diversion she had permitted. Though she would never admit it, deep down, past the burning humiliation of being outsmarted by the very child she had discarded, a strange flicker of pride emerged. Her son, her first son, had proven his worth, not with brutish strength, but with intellect. He had brought the entire pantheon to its knees without raising a hand. With all problems seemingly resolved, Hephaestus vindicated, Hera freed, Aphrodite betrothed, the celebration could finally begin. New invitations were immediately dispatched by Hermes, zipping across the cosmos, announcing a change of plans, a double wedding of unparalleled grandeur. This was not just the long-awaited formal nuptial feast of the King and Queen of Heaven, Zeus and Hera, a ceremony to legitimize their reign. It was also the wedding of Hephaestus, the god of fire and forges, to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. The entire universe vibrated with excitement. Such an event had never been known in the short, violent history of creation. For the first time, a true, stable order seemed to have settled upon the cosmos, and this was to be its inaugural celebration. The news spread like pollen on the wind. Nymphs of all kinds abandoned their posts in a flurry of anticipation. Oreads whispered the news from their mountain peaks, their voices echoing down to the naiads in the rivers, who bubbled with gossip. Dryads rustled the news through the forests, their leaves trembling. They all chattered about what they would wear, what gifts they could possibly bring to such an event. The spirits of nature, the lustful fauns with their goat legs, the wild satyrs reeking of wine, and the gentle, graceful Meliae, the ash-tree nymphs, all began the great pilgrimage, finding their way through hidden paths and ancient groves up to the staggering heights of Mount Olympus. To demonstrate his absolute magnanimity, his supreme confidence as the new ruler, Zeus did something unthinkable. He issued a decree of temporary amnesty for some of the Titans who had fought against him in the Great War. Of course, not Atlas. That was impossible. The Titans still strained under the weight of the heavens. His punishment, a permanent fixture of the new cosmology. And certainly not Kronos, who was now a wraith of his former self, banished to wander aimlessly, his mind lost in the agonizing, endless contemplation of time itself. But the less dangerous, less violent Titans, perhaps Iapetus, the father of Prometheus, and Hyperion, the father of the sun, were forgiven. They were permitted to leave their lesser confinements and attend the wedding of their conqueror. It was a masterful political stroke, a declaration to the cosmos that Zeus had not only won, but that his victory was so absolute, he could now rule with mercy as well as might. The pardoned Titans arrived, huge and awkward in the glittering halls of Olympus, their ancient power dimmed, nodding respectfully to the new gods who had once been their jailers. The festival began. The air on Olympus, usually crisp and thin, was now thick with the scent of 1,000 roasted beasts, with the celestial music of Apollo's lyre, and with the joyous, chaotic din of immortal celebration. But as the feast wore on, Zeus, seated on his throne, began to feel a familiar sensation creeping upon him. It was boredom. He surveyed the perfect harmony, the laughter, the dancing nymphs, the subservient titans. It was all so stable, so finished. His divine mind, which thrived on conflict and creation, grew restless. With a mischievous spark in his eye, he rose, silencing the music with a single gesture. He announced a challenge. A culinary competition. The rules were simple. Anyone god, demigod, nymph, or even animal who could invent, create, and present a brand new, original, and utterly delicious dish would be granted any favor whatsoever from the king of the gods. Any favor from Zeus. The promise hung in the air, more valuable than all the gold in Hephaestus's forge. A sudden, frenzied excitement eclipsed the polite celebration. This was a chance for the lesser beings, the spirits and creatures who usually skittered in the margins of the divine world. This was an opportunity to rise, to be noticed, to change their fate. The magnificent halls of Olympus were instantly transformed into a chaotic test kitchen. Mice, frogs, lizards, bears, beavers, and birds all scrambled, desperate to create a masterpiece. And then, the presentation began. Long trestle tables were brought out. Zeus and Hera, assuming the role of supreme judges, walked slowly down the line, sniffing, tapping, prodding, tasting, sipping, and licking their way through the entries, like the world's first and most intimidating food critics. The scene was an absurd marvel. There were strange, wobbly cakes made of river silt and pollen. There were small buns baked from acorns and mountain moss. There were porridges of mold and shimmering terrines made from eel skin. Every possible combination of sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and savory was presented. The hopeful competitors trembled, their small hearts pounding. When Zeus paused at a bay, glistening, hibiscus-pink jelly containing walnuts and, somewhat alarmingly, iridescent beetles, he took a small taste and nodded approvingly. Not bad. Nutty. The creator, a young heron named Margaret, let out a single piercing shriek of pure joy and fainted dead away, collapsing in a heap of feathers. But hers was not the prize. The winner, declared after much deliberation, was the seemingly modest submission of a shy, tiny, winged creature named Melissa. She didn't present an elaborate pie or a complex stew. She offered only a very small, earthenware amphora, filled almost to the brim with a sticky, translucent amber-colored goo. "Ah, yes," Zeus said, dipping his divine finger into the jar with a knowledgeable and approving nod. Pine resin. He was, after all, familiar with the Greek taste for adding resin to wine. A drink they called retsina, a concoction that, even today, might cause a non-Greek palate to recoil in turpentine-like horror. But it was not pine resin. It was something entirely new. It was a substance that defied simple description. It was viscous without being oily, slow-moving without being sludgy. It was sweet, profoundly sweet, yet it wasn't cloying. It was complex and bright, and the aroma, it was an explosion of scent that drove the senses wild with pleasure. Melissa called it honey. Hera took a small, elegant spoonful. As it touched her tongue, she felt, rather than tasted, the essence of 1,000 meadows, the subtle perfume of mountain herbs, all dancing and humming inside her mouth. Zeus, watching her, licked the spoon clean and let out a deep, appreciative He and Hera looked at each other and nodded. No further consultation was needed. Ahem. Zeus cleared his throat, addressing the anxious crowd. The, standard has been agreeably high this year. Well done all, but Queen Hera and I are agreed. This, honey takes first place. The other creatures, heroically trying to hide their crushing disappointment, put on sporting expressions of pleasure. They formed a large semicircle as Melissa, the little bee, zipped forward, buzzing with nervous excitement, to claim her prize one wish, to be granted by the king of the gods himself. Dread Lord, she began, her tiny voice buzzing with earnestness. I am pleased you like my delicacy, but I must tell you, it is quite extraordinarily hard to make. I have to zoom from flower to collect the nectar deep inside. Only the smallest amount can be sucked up and carried each time. All day, for as long as aether grants me light to see by, I must sip, search, and return to the nest. Sip, search, and return, often traveling enormous distances. Even then, at day's end, I will only have the tiniest possible fraction of nectar to convert, using my secret process, into the confection that has so pleased you. She paused, her buzzing taking on an angry, frustrated edge. That little amphora you hold? It took me 4.5 weeks to fill. You see, it is a most laborious business, and the smell of honey is so intense, so ravishing, so irresistible, that many come to raid my nest. They do so with impunity, for I am small, and all I can do is buzz angrily and urge them to leave. Imagine, a whole week's work can be lost with just one swipe of a weasel's paw, or one lick of a bear cub's tongue. She flew a little closer to Zeus's face, her tiny form vibrating with indignation. I only ask for a weapon, your majesty. You equip the scorpion, who makes no foodstuff, with a deadly sting. You granted the snake, who does nothing but bask in the sun, a venomous bite. Give me, great Zeus, such a weapon, a fatal one, that will kill any who dare to steal my precious stock of honey. The hall fell deathly silent. The music stopped. The nymphs paused, mid-laugh. Zeus's eyebrows gathered in a dark and troubled frown. A low, ominous rumble of thunder was heard, not in the distance, but seemingly right outside the Spelzos the Rendo's palace. The sky beyond the pillars began to darken. The gods fidgeted. Zeus, the god who prized Xenia hospitality and generosity above almost all else, had just listened to a plea not just of profound selfishness, but of profound hubris. Melissa was not asking to protect herself. She was asking for the power of death, simply to hoard her creation. Wretched insect, Zeus thundered, his voice crashing through the hall. How dare you demand so monstrous a prize? A talent like yours should be shared out, not jealously hoarded. Not only shall I deny your request, Melissa, either too foolish or too desperate to recognize the danger, interrupted the king of the gods, but you gave your word. A collective gasp went up from the assembly. To interrupt Zeus? To question his honor? I think, Zeus growled, his voice dropping to an icy self-restraint far more terrifying than any outburst of temper. You will find that I proclaimed that the winner could ask any favor. I made no promise that such a request would be granted. Melissa's wings drooped in disappointment. However, Zeus continued, raising a single finger. His own sense of fairness, perhaps, warred with his anger. From this moment forward, the gathering of your honey will be made easier. I decree that you shall not labor alone. You will be queen of a whole colony, a whole swarm of productive subjects. Furthermore, I shall grant you a fatal and painful sting. Melissa's wings pricked up perkily. But, Zeus's voice boomed again, while it will bring a sharp pain to the one you sting, it is to you and your kind that it will bring death. So let it be. Another rumble of thunder, and the sky began to clear. Melissa felt a strange, sharp movement inside her. She looked down and saw something long, thin, and sharp, like a lance, pushing its way out of the end of her abdomen. It was a sting. as finely pointed as a needle, but ending in a wicked, terrible barb, with a wild twitch, a buzz, and a final, droning, a wail of despair. She flew away. Metis is still the Greek word for the honeybee, and it is true, its sting is a suicide weapon, of last resort. If it should try to fly away after the barb has lodged in the skin of its victim, the bee will tug out its own insides in the effort of freeing itself. The much less useful and diligent wasp, meanwhile, has no such barb and can administer its sting as many times as it likes. But wasps, annoying as they are, never made selfish, hubristic demands of the gods. And it is also true that science calls the order of insects to which the honeybee belongs Hymenoptera, which is Greek for wedding wings, in honor of the very feast where their fate was sealed. Perhaps it was more than just temper that caused Zeus to punish Melissa so severely. Perhaps it was policy. The entire assembled world of immortals was there to witness the moment. It had been a lesson for them all in the implacability of the king of the gods. A new silence fell on the wedding feast, as dark as the storm clouds that had just passed. Zeus raised the small amphora of honey high above his head. His grim expression softened. He smiled. "For my queen and my beloved wife, I bless this amphora. It shall never empty. Eternally shall it feed us. Whosoever tastes its honey shall never grow old or die. It shall be Ambrosia, the food of the gods, and when mixed with the juice of fruits, it shall be nectar, the drink of the gods." A great cheer went up. Doves flew overhead, the clouds and the silence dispelled. The muses Calliope, Euterpe, and Terpsichore stepped forward and clapped their hands. Music played, hymns of praise were sung, and the dancing began. Many plates were broken in ecstasy, a tradition carried on to this day, wherever Greeks gather to eat and celebrate. Hera's cup was running over literally as an attentive naiad filled her goblet, but figuratively too. Her oldest son had made a brilliant, if unconventional, marriage, and Zeus had sworn oaths of couplet, fidelity to her before all who mattered. She did not notice that, even now, at his own wedding feast, her insatiable lord, her husband, Zeus, was watching the dance floor with lustful eyes. His gaze had fallen on Leto, a most beautiful nymph from the island of Kos. She was a daughter of the Titans, Phoebe and Coos, the very Titans who were present at the feast thanks to Zeus's recent amnesty. A voice murmured inside Zeus's ear, a voice only he could hear. "You are thinking that my cousin Leto owes you her life and should therefore be willing to share her bed with you." It was the voice of Metis, the wise, clever Oceanid he had swallowed, the one who now lived inside his head, a permanent check on his passions. Zeus started, but the blood in his veins, already warmed by the new, divine nectar and ambrosia, was heated further by the dancing and the music. The spark that had always jumped between him and Metis, the memory of his desire for her, threatened to burst into a great fire. Metis sensed this. "Never, Zeus, never. I have been like a mother to you. Besides, this is your wedding day. Are you lost to all sense of decency?" All sense of decency was exactly what Zeus was lost to. He desired Leto, but now he found himself desiring the voice in his head even more. He remembered her wisdom, her grace, her guile. An idea, a terrible hubristic idea far greater than Kronos' child-eating paranoia, began to form in his mind. He had to possess Metis, not just as a voice, but completely. He began to pursue her, right there, inside his own consciousness. And so, the wedding feast ends. A new food, ambrosia, is named. A tiny creature, the bee, is given a fatal, double-edged gift. And Zeus, king of the gods, driven by a prophecy and a familiar, paranoid fear, has committed an act even Kronos never imagined. He has swallowed his first love, Metis, the goddess of wisdom herself. What happens when a god consumes counsel? What fate awaits Leto, the new object of his desire? And what will be born from this divine consumption? Join us next time on Eternal Olympus for a story of the most splitting headache in history and the miraculous armor-clad birth that sprang from it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and journey with us again into the mists of myth,